what a 3-bet really is. In online poker games, a lot of money is won or lost before the flop. The players who consistently print are the ones who understand pre-flop betting sequences and who is allowed to put in the next aggressive action. A 3-bet is not a fancy move. It is a specific point in the betting hierarchy. Once you see that hierarchy clearly, your decisions get cleaner, faster, and more profitable. The betting hierarchy you must know. Think in terms of how many bets have been made in the current street. Pre-flop, the sequence looks like this. First bet, the opener. Someone raises first after the blinds. Example, under the gun opens to 2.5 big blinds. Second bet, somebody could call that raise. Calling does not add a new bet level, it just continues the action. Third bet, a player re-raises the opener. That re-raise is the 3-bet. Fourth bet, the original raiser re-raises again. That is a 4-bet. So the 3-bet is simply the first re-raise in the hand. Simple definition, but strategically it is massive because it drives pot size, isolates ranges, and forces opponents to defend correctly or bleed expected value. Why 3-betting matters in online poker. When multi-tabling, you do not have time for messy guesses. The 3-bet is a structure tool. It forces clarity because it narrows ranges fast and creates decision points with real stakes. 3-betting also interacts with rake. In most online pools, small pots get raked relatively hard. That means passive lines that create lots of low expected value flops, especially cold calling too much, often underperform. A good 3-bet strategy helps you win cleaner pots or play bigger pots with range advantage. 3-bet versus call, what you are choosing. Pre-flop, you usually have 3 options when facing an open, fold, call, or 3-bet. The 3-bet option is the only one that immediately pressures your opponent's range. First, calling keeps ranges wide and invites more players in. Who is left to act becomes a big part of the expected value, because squeezes and multi-way pots punish speculative calls. Second, 3-betting builds a pot, often buys you the button, and pushes the opener toward folding their weakest opens. Relative strength is everything. A hand like ace-jack offsuit might feel decent, but if you call on the button and the blinds are aggressive, you may walk into a squeeze. If you 3-bet, you deny those players an easy attack and you cap the opener's range less often. What hands make a 3-bet range? Since this is definitional, I want your framework, not a memorized chart. A 3-bet range typically contains 2 buckets. First, value 3-bets. Hands happy to get called and often happy to play for stacks depending on depth. Think pocket queens and better ace-king suited, ace-king offsuit as a baseline in many configurations. Second, bluff 3-bets. Hands that are not strong enough to call profitably every time, but have good blockers, good playability, or both. Think ace-5 suited, king-10 suited, queen-jack suited, some suited connectors depending on position and opponent. Context dictates strategy. A 3-bet range from the button versus a cutoff open is not the same as a 3-bet from the big blind versus an under-the-gun open. Position, opener's range, and the players behind you change everything. 3-bet sizing, the goal is not big, it is correct. Sizing is part of the definition in practice. If you 3-bet too small, you give great price, invite calls, and you lose fold equity. If you 3-bet too big, you force folds from hands you wanted to keep in, and you bloat pots with marginal hands. First, in position, a common online sizing is around 3 times the open. Second, out of position, it is often closer to 4 times, sometimes more versus small opens or sticky opponents. Why larger out of position? Because you will realize equity worse when you act first post-flop. You want extra fold equity now, and you want a pot size that makes later decisions simpler. Who is left to act? The hidden expected value variable. If you remember one concept, make it this. Preflop expected value is not just your hand versus the opener. It is your hand versus the opener plus the players behind you. Calling a cutoff open on the button is very different from calling in the hijack with the button and blinds yet to act. In the second case, you invite a squeeze from competent regulars and you turn a pretty hand into a dominated low realization spot. 3-betting often performs better simply because it denies the table an easy way to punish you. Common misconceptions I see every day. First, a 3-bet means I have a monster. Not in modern poker. Strong players have bluffs in their 3-bet ranges, otherwise they get exploited by overfolding and by playing perfectly versus your face-up value. Second, I will just call and see a flop. That is hope poker. In raked online games, passive calling without a plan is a leak. You need a reason, such as keeping dominated hands in, protecting a weaker player in the blinds, or leveraging position with a hand that realizes well. Third, set mining versus 3-bets is fine. Not as a default, you are paying a premium and you do not always get paid. If stacks are not deep enough or the 3-better is tight, you burn money. Hand scenario. Button pressure test. Game, 100 big blinds online. Cash. Hero on the button with ace of hearts. 5 of spades. Cutoff opens to 2.5 big blinds. Blinds are unknown regulars multi-tabling. Action. Hero 3. Bets to 8 big blinds. Cutoff calls. Pot is now built, and we have position with a hand that has wheel equity and an ace blocker. Flop. King of clubs, 7 of diamonds. 2 of spades. Cutoff checks. Hero makes a small C bet. What this demonstrates, the 3-bet did 2 jobs. First, it applied pre-flop pressure to a wide cutoff range, generating folds immediately. Second, when called, it created a heads-up pot where Hero has position and the initiative. Even on a flop where we rarely improved, our range contains strong kings and big pairs, so we can profitably represent them with a sizing that forces real decisions. Definition to strategy, where you go next. Once you understand what a 3-bet is, your next step is learning how to construct ranges that are not guesswork. You want value hands that dominate calls and bluffs that have blockers and playability. You also want your default strategy to be active. In modern online environments, especially with rake, a disciplined 3-bet approach fights the 2 biggest leaks I see, calling too much and letting the table control the pot. Key takeaway. A 3-bet is the first re-raise pre-flop. Your job is to see it as a tool that narrows ranges, increases fold equity, and protects you from players left to act. In online poker, where rake and aggression punish passive calling, you should 3-bet with a clear split between value hands that want action and bluffs that block strong holdings and realize equity well in position. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. In the pre-flop betting hierarchy described, what exactly is a 3-bet? Answer. The first re-raise pre-flop, a re-raise of the opener. Explanation. The article defines a 3-bet as the 3rd bet level on the street. Opener raises, then someone re-raises for the first time. Question 2. According to the article, why do passive lines like cold calling too much often underperform in raked online pools? Answer, because small pots get raked relatively hard, making lots of low expected value flops from passive calling a losing approach. Explanation, the text highlights rake as a key reason. Creating many small, marginal pots through too much calling gets punished in most online environments. Question 3. What are the 2 buckets a typical 3-bet range should contain in the framework given? Answer, value 3-bets and bluff 3-bets. Explanation. The article recommends building ranges with hands that want action for value plus bluffs chosen for blockers, playability, or both. Question 4. What common 3-bet sizing does the article give for in-position and out-of-position play? Answer, in position, about 3 times the open. Out of position, closer to 4 times, sometimes more. Explanation, the article's sizing guidance is tied to realizing equity, worse out of position, so you typically size larger to gain fold equity and simplify later decisions. Question 5. In the button pressure test scenario, what 2 jobs did the 3-bet accomplish according to the article? Answer. It applied pre-flop pressure to a wide cutoff range to generate folds, and when called, it created a heads-up pot where Hero had position and the initiative. Explanation: the scenario's point is that 3-betting both wins expected value immediately through fold equity and improves the structure of the pot when you get called. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.